Olivia Blake didn't lower her voice. Right in front of the guests, she pointed at Marcus. "Get him out of this hallway. The hotel's image does not allow someone so sloppy to stand in front of Mr. Carrington." The service cart still carried stains of spilled coffee. The name tag on his chest was old and scratched. Marcus stood frozen, eyes cast down, fingers tightening around the cleaning rag. He heard the quiet chuckles of a few coworkers, mixed with the icy stare of the manager. Time and again, he had been pushed aside like a stain that needed scrubbing away. The VIP hadn't even arrived yet, but the air was already thick with pressure. Marcus knew the unwritten rule. In this world, a black employee like him was only noticed when he made a mistake. But this time, the sting felt different, like a cut slicing right into the pride he kept buried. He carefully wheeled the cart into a corner, bowed his head, and walked away quietly. But in his pocket, he still felt the lump of a worn notebook, the one where he had scribbled the signs he'd learned to talk with his deaf cousin. He didn't know yet that this little notebook was about to tip the balance of power in a fateful encounter. Olivia straightened her blazer, a stiff smile plastered across her face. When billionaire Elliot Carrington walked into the lobby, his expression was calm, but his eyes swept the room in silence. Olivia quickly pulled out her phone, opening an app that translated sign language into text and flashed the screen toward the deaf tycoon as if technology itself were a badge of competence. For the first few seconds, it seemed fine. Then the app glitched. On screen, it read, "The sun is drinking coffee in the dark." A heavy silence fell. Elliot frowned. His assistant, Vanessa, forced a polite smile and pretended not to notice. Employees exchanged whispers, one even stifled a laugh. Olivia broke into a sweat, her fingers trembling as she tapped again, but the phrases only got worse. "Please eat the sofa." The room froze. A few sideways glances darted toward Marcus, as if somehow this failure was his fault, just because he was there. From the back, Marcus touched the notebook in his pocket. He looked at Elliot and saw not anger in his eyes, but a deep weariness, an exhaustion born of being unheard. That loneliness struck something inside Marcus. A few days earlier, in a bright conference room, Olivia had stood before a projector screen, voice firm. "We're about to host one of the most powerful clients we've ever had. The number one priority? A flawless image." Slide after slide flashed by revenue charts, cocktail menus, fresh flowers, warm lighting for the dinner event. But in the bottom corner, the section labeled language culture sat empty. No one asked, no one cared. A young staff member had quietly raised a concern. "Mr. Carrington is deaf. Do we have an interpreter lined up?" Olivia barely glanced at him and brushed it off. "The new app will handle that. What matters most is smiling and looking polished." The room went silent. Worry flickered in a few eyes, quickly hidden behind the sound of typing. Marcus, delivering water just outside, overheard through the cracked door. He froze, tray clutched tight in his hands. That cold dismissal seared itself into his memory, like a warning of the disaster to come. When the door shut, Marcus looked down at the notebook in his pocket. He wanted to step in, to say something, but instead he walked away, as he had done so many times before. Now, standing in the shadows, Marcus pulled out that worn notebook. The edges of the paper were frayed. On the first page, in messy handwriting, it read, ASL, Lessons with Mia. He flipped to a page covered in crude sketches of hand signs, a palm spread wide, an index finger curved into a circle, the sign for hope. A memory rushed back. His cousin Mia at 13, sitting under a tree, signing slowly while Marcus mimicked her gestures with patience. It was their secret language, a bridge to keep Mia from being lost in a world of sound. Another employee walked past, sneering, "Still fooling around with that silly stuff?" Marcus shut the notebook, stuffed it back in his pocket, and stayed silent. To them, he was just the guy who scrubbed tables and changed sheets. But his fingers were agile, and with his thumb, he traced the sign for courage in the air. No one saw it. But deep down, Marcus knew this silent language could become the key, just waiting for the right moment. Outside, the low purr of an engine broke the air. A sleek black sedan rolled to a stop in front of the hotel. Vanessa stepped out first, portfolio tucked under her arm, her stride brisk. Then came Elliot Carrington, tall, Silver hair, neatly combed back, eyes sharp but wordless. Without saying a thing, his presence filled the lobby. The staff buzzed nervously. Olivia rushed forward with her tense smile. "Welcome, Mr. Carrington." Elliot gave a faint nod, lips pressed tight, gaze drifting to the display board behind her where garbled translations scrolled. From a distance, Marcus watched. He saw the invisible divide, the entourage moving like a river of elegance, while he was nothing but a stone at its edge. Olivia barked at the staff, "Clear the walkway, now." Marcus pushed his cart back, hiding behind a pillar. Elliot paused for the briefest second, his eyes brushing past Marcus. No one noticed. But in that fleeting glance, Marcus sensed something, not disdain, but recognition. Then the procession moved on. Olivia chattered nonstop. Vanessa tapped quickly on her tablet. But Elliot's silence hung heavy, like a wall waiting for someone brave enough to cross. Down the glossy hallway, Vanessa's tablet struggled to keep up. Elliot signed slowly, asking about dinner, but the screen flashed, "Broken window." The group stumbled into awkward silence. Olivia forced a smile. "Apologies, sir, must be the Wi-Fi." But sweat dotted her forehead. Whispers rippled through the staff, fear spreading like wildfire. Trailing behind, Marcus caught every detail. The heavy pauses, Elliot's furrowed brow, Olivia's panic. And in Elliot's eyes, he saw not fury, but the same tired sadness he'd seen in Mia when she signed over and over, yet no one bothered to understand. At the end of the hall, the clock ticked steadily. Marcus shivered. Time was running out, so was Elliot's patience. Inside the bright conference room, the long table was set, crystal water glasses in perfect order. Olivia sat beside Elliot, brimming with forced confidence, launching into the meeting with her translation app. Elliot signed carefully, his gaze unwavering. The screen translated, "The cat wants to run the company." A muffled chuckle escaped a few junior staffers, quickly silenced. Elliot's frown wiped the air clean. Olivia panicked, restarted the app. This time it produced, "Your chair is exploding." The atmosphere collapsed into tension. Vanessa flushed, scrambling to jot explanations on paper, but Elliot shook his head, eyes hardening. The barrier was total, unbreakable. From the back of the room, Marcus clutched his tray. Every sign he had ever practiced came rushing back. He knew if he stayed silent, everything would fall apart. But stepping forward meant defying the very system that had shoved him aside all his life. Olivia finally called for a 5-minute break. Staff poured into the hallway, phones buzzing, someone frantically trying to reach a remote interpreter, only to hit a busy signal again and again. Panic spread like a hive in chaos. Vanessa paced, biting her lip, whispering to Olivia, "If Mr. Carrington walks out, this deal is gone." Olivia only nodded, pale and shaken. Marcus lingered by a pillar, hearing every word. His heart pounded. Through the cracked door, he saw Elliot sitting alone, upright but adrift, a powerful man abandoned in foreign silence. The clock ticked louder. Staff argued, "We should have prepared better." "Blame the app, not me." Marcus squeezed the rag in his hand. The old feeling rose, being invisible, treated as an obstacle. But this time, he felt a thread binding him to Elliot. Two people stranded in a world that refused to listen. The door swung open. Elliot Carrington rose to his feet, posture sharp as a blade. His hands moved in firm, decisive signs toward Vanessa. The young assistant blanched, stammering, He says there's no need to continue. This meeting is over." A chill swept through the room. Olivia nearly collapsed, scrambling to step in. "Mr. Carrington, please, give us just a little more time." But Elliot had already closed his portfolio, his eyes cold, heavy with disappointment. The staff murmured nervously, some casting sharp looks at Marcus, as if his very presence had cursed the meeting. Marcus felt the blood rush hot to his face. He remembered every time he'd been shoved aside, every chance buried. And now here it was again, the entire hotel, a multi-million-dollar deal, crashing because no one truly understood the man in front of them. Elliot slipped a hand into his jacket pocket, eyes fixed on the door. Everyone held their breath, hearts pounding with each subtle movement. If Elliot walked out, everything would collapse like a house of cards. In the back, Marcus clenched the rag in his fist until his knuckles turned white. A memory struck him, Mia's clear, honest eyes as she signed to him, "You are my voice." He remembered that summer afternoon when Mia had broken down in tears while the class laughed at her, and he was the only one who raised his hands to sign back comfort. Fear surged in him. If he stepped forward now, he'd be branded as overstepping. He could lose his job instantly. But if he stayed silent, Elliot would walk out, and Marcus would carry the weight of that silence for the rest of his life, knowing he could have changed everything but chose to hide. He drew in a deep breath. Slowly, Marcus peeled off the worn server's glove, revealing calloused hands. He stared at them as if they were wings waiting to open. Inside, Elliot had already turned toward the door. That was the moment Marcus knew he couldn't stay hidden any longer. "Wait!" Marcus called out, voice trembling. Then, without pause, he lifted his hands, fingers shaping clear, practiced signs. "Please stay." The room froze. Olivia stood stunned, eyes wide in disbelief. Elliot stopped mid-step, turning to look at Marcus. For an instant, a flicker of light crossed his otherwise cold expression. Marcus walked forward slowly, his hands steady, deliberate. "My name is Marcus. I understand you. I can help." Vanessa stared, mouth open. Olivia flushed, ready to shut him down, but she was too late. Elliot gave a small nod, the corner of his lips curling into the faintest smile. Then his hands moved signs fast, precise. Marcus translated aloud with steady clarity, "I've been waiting for someone to speak to me in my own language." Silence gripped the room. A few staff exchanged glances, caught between awe and shame. But the balance of power had shifted. For the first time, Elliot chose to stay, not because of the hotel, but because of Marcus. Recovering from shock, Olivia scrambled to reclaim control. "Good, Marcus, if you know sign language, then you can interpret for us." She pressed hard on the word interpret like a cage snapping shut. They pulled up a small chair for Marcus, tucked at the edge of the table, a step lower than everyone else. He sat, palms damp with sweat. In his coworkers' eyes, he had gone from invisible to a stopgap tool in an instant. Elliot began to sign. Marcus translated aloud, his voice firm, fluent. Gasps rippled through the room, but still, the others eyed him cautiously, as if afraid he might step out of line. Marcus felt the constraint clearly. He knew he was more than a mouthpiece. He'd studied the culture, the way the deaf community saw the world, but here, he was boxed in, treated like a machine spitting out words. He looked at Elliot and caught the billionaire's gaze. It wasn't cold now. It was probing, expectant, waiting for something more. Marcus understood. This was the real chance, waiting for a leap. As Olivia carried on, Elliot suddenly signed again, not toward Vanessa this time, but directly at Marcus. His hands moved swiftly, with weight. Marcus translated, his voice ringing through the room. "I want to hear your thoughts, Marcus, not just the translation, yours." The room froze solid. Olivia gave a strained laugh, trying to cut in. "Mr. Carrington, Marcus is just a server." Elliot silenced her with a sharp gesture, his stare unwavering. Marcus's heart hammered. This was it, the turning point. All the years of being overlooked, dismissed, reduced, funneling into one moment. He inhaled deeply, hands opening, fingers gliding through the air as he spoke. "I believe what you want isn't just service, but vision." His words carried strength, his signs weaving alongside them. Elliot smiled, then pulled out the empty chair beside him, inviting Marcus to sit as an equal. The screech of the chair, legs across the floor, echoed like a declaration. The man once pushed to the margins was now seated at the table with a billionaire, a shift no one could undo. Marcus flipped open his battered ASL notebook, thumbing through faded pages. He pointed to scribbled notes, observations about the needs of the deaf community, from meeting room layouts to service flow. "Mr. Carrington," Marcus signed and spoke together. "Deaf guests don't just need interpreters. They need to feel seen. Clear visuals on presentations, proper lighting, seating arranged for eye contact. These matter more than flowers or wine." Elliot nodded, his eyes lighting with recognition. His hands moved quickly, and Marcus translated, "This is exactly what I've been searching for. Someone who understands from the inside." Olivia rushed, cut back in, voice strained. We can absolutely make adjustments. But Elliot waved her off, attention locked on Marcus. The authority no longer belonged to management. Marcus pressed on, his voice unwavering, his hands carving bold signs in the air. To truly lead, this hotel must be a place where even the silent are heard. The room seemed spellbound. For the first time, they saw Marcus not as a lowly worker, but as someone with vision, someone who mattered. Elliot leaned forward and signed something unusual quick, slightly off-standard, almost playful. Marcus froze, then chuckled softly. It was a personal sign, one used only among close friends. "I trust you." Gasps rippled through the staff. Elliot rarely shared private signs with outsiders. Vanessa stared at Marcus like she'd just witnessed the impossible. Marcus signed it back, eyes glowing. Trust passed between them without a single spoken word. From that moment, they weren't billionaire and server, they were two people who truly understood one another. The tension in the room dissolved. A few staff finally exhaled, but Olivia sat rigid, nails digging into her palms, realizing control had slipped beyond her grasp. Marcus kept interpreting, but now it was more than translation. He had become the bridge, transforming the suffocating boardroom into a space of equal dialogue. And Elliot, with that personal sign, had openly handed him authority. Marcus grabbed a pen and scribbled quickly on a blank sheet, a checklist. Direct lighting, parallel captions, basic ASL training for staff, a direct feedback channel. As he wrote, he signed each point, illustrating with his hands. Elliot watched closely, his expression softening. He signed back. "This is exactly what the market has been missing." Marcus echoed the words aloud, then added, "If this hotel becomes a pioneer in serving the deaf community, you won't just gain a contract, you'll gain a loyal market." Olivia jumped in, voice clipped. "We already have a comprehensive marketing plan. No need to adjust." But Elliot waved her off again, his eyes still locked on Marcus. Marcus slid the checklist across the table, his hand trembling slightly but his voice steady. "This isn't just service. This is respect." The room fell silent. Those simple bullet points, scribbled in plain handwriting, carried more weight than any polished slide deck. The pencil in Marcus's hand had become the most powerful weapon in the room. Olivia switched on the projector, flooding the wall with glossy charts and dazzling visuals. "We've prepared this thoroughly. Mr. Carrington, please look at our official presentation." Her voice trembled slightly, but she forced herself to sound authoritative. The bluish light washed over the room, but Elliot never glanced at it. He tilted his head, waiting for Marcus to continue. Marcus looked at the slides, then turned back to the room. "Pretty numbers don't erase the truth. If a hotel can't understand the silent guests, all of this is just decoration." His words rang out, sharp and clear. For the first time, a few staff members nodded in agreement with him instead of Olivia. Olivia's face flushed as she tried to keep smiling, but the slide stuck on the words, "luxury experience," now looked hollow, powerless. Marcus raised his hands and signed, then spoke the words aloud, "Real luxury is when everyone is heard." Elliot chuckled, a quiet laugh that seemed to echo. In that instant, the balance of power flipped. Olivia was no longer steering the room. Every eye turned to Marcus. Then a partner seated at the far end of the table, silent until now, suddenly asked, "Marcus, why would someone with your knowledge and skills be just a room attendant?" The question cut through the air like a blade. Everyone turned to stare. Olivia dropped her gaze, her face stiffening. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He had dodged that question for years, but now it stood before him under the harshest spotlight. He looked down at his worn ASL notebook, its frayed pages, a witness to countless quiet nights of practice. His voice came steady and low, because sometimes society only sees skin color and job titles, not true worth. But I'm here today, and I won't stay silent anymore. Elliot leaned forward, eyes sharp yet kind. He signed. "That's right. No one should be forgotten." Marcus spoke the words out loud for the room. The space froze in absolute silence. This was no longer a business meeting. It was raw truth, demanding to be faced. Elliot slowly pulled the portfolio back toward himself. He signed decisively, his gaze locked on Marcus. Marcus translated clearly, "I'll sign this contract, but not because of the hotel's preparation. I'm signing because Marcus showed me the truth." Gasps rippled across the room. Olivia's mouth fell open. Staff members stared, stunned. A collective sigh of relief rose from one corner. Vanessa smiled faintly, her eyes shining with quiet triumph. Marcus sat frozen, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure whether to feel proud or terrified. But when Elliot's pen touched paper, each stroke of black ink etched the deal into reality, not saved by tech, not by glossy pitches, but by the voice of a man long overlooked. The soft scratch of the pen blended with the room's uneven breathing. It was as if everyone had just woken from a dream. Elliot looked up and signed again. True success isn't about money, it's about whether we really see each other. Marcus repeated the words aloud, and this time, the room erupted in applause. When the clapping subsided, Elliot rose and walked straight to Marcus. The room held its breath. From his wallet, he pulled out a sleek black partner's card. He placed it into Marcus's hand, then added his personal business card, his signature scrawled across the back. The chandelier light glinted off the black card, once a symbol of wealth and exclusivity. But in that moment, it meant something more. Recognition. Elliot extended his hand. The handshake was firm, equal, unhurried. Unlike before, the billionaire now regarded Marcus as a true partner. Olivia forced a smile, though her eyes betrayed her loss. Around the room, staff whispered, some nodding, others blushing with shame. Marcus looked at the card, then at Elliot. He knew this wasn't just personal glory. It was proof that someone ordinary, someone dismissed, could shift the balance of power. Applause rose again, warmer, stronger. Marcus stood there, visible for the first time. The next day, at the summary meeting, the hotel director made a formal announcement. We've decided to appoint Marcus Hayes as strategic advisor for deaf accessibility services. Shocked murmurs spread, mingled with envy. Marcus stood, still wearing his housekeeper's uniform, but his eyes told a different story. Calmly, he said, I accept not for the title. I accept because I believe every guest deserves to be heard. At the head of the table, Elliot nodded approvingly, a faint smile crossing his face. Marcus's words weren't flowery, but they carried enough weight to silence the room. Olivia lowered her gaze, shame flickering across her features, but also, faintly, hope. Perhaps this was her one chance to make things right. Marcus placed his old ASL notebook on the table, the first page open, like a pledge. From this day forward, the hotel would no longer overlook the silent ones. A few days later, the regional director held a video conference. His stern face filled the screen as he looked directly at Olivia and the management team. You ignored the most important cultural factor and nearly cost us this contract. This was a systemic failure, and it will not happen again. The room grew heavy. Olivia bit her lip and nodded, her hands trembling. Staff who had once dismissed Marcus bowed their heads, unable to meet his eyes. The director continued, from now on, basic sign language training and accessibility awareness will be mandatory. Luxury isn't flowers and wine. Marcus sat quietly at the back. He didn't need to speak. His presence in the black card Elliot had given him spoke louder than words. Olivia's eyes flickered toward him. For a fleeting moment, she seemed to truly see him not as a shadow in the hallway, but as a human being. One quiet afternoon, Marcus walked down the corridor. He noticed a new employee, thin and nervous, polishing the glass doors. A passing guest brushed his shoulder without apology. The young man lowered his eyes, the same way Marcus once had. Marcus stopped. He pulled the worn ASL notebook from his pocket, its cover faded, and handed it to the young man. The boy looked up, startled. Marcus smiled. Learn this. One day it might be the voice the world needs. The young man's hands shook as he took it, his eyes lighting with hope. In that moment, Marcus wasn't just an advisor, or someone finally recognized. He had become a bridge, passing the flame to the next in line. He walked on, golden light stretching across the floor. A calm settled over him. For the first time, Marcus felt truly free, not because of a title or a card, but because he had found his worth and shared it. His footsteps faded into the distance, leaving behind a simple truth. Sometimes, when one person is finally seen, an entire community changes.